Going back to our top story on the face-off between Japan and China in the Senkaku, close to the Senkaku Islands in the territorial waters there. We are joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, for his perspective on the story. Ambassador Bhattacharya, do you see this face-off over Senkaku as a warning shot by China or the beginning of some more, concerted military measures?
Well, as you know, the Chinese and the Japanese have had the difference over Senkaku, or Diaoyu as the Chinese call it, for a very long period of time. As Prime Minister Kishida was on a visit to the United States, a very successful visit, I'm not surprised that the Chinese decided to have one of their ships reach out towards the Senkaku at such a time to send a signal. Since this is something that happens rather routinely between the two sides, I would say this is more in the nature of signaling rather than something that is more foreboding.
The Chinese have, been slowly increasing the number of vessels entering the territorial waters in Senkaku. There were 16 reported in 2023. And, from 2016, they've been sending naval vessels in as well. So clearly their intent has changed.
The manner in which the Chinese intrusions into the Japanese territorial and economic zone waters has expanded is something that is worthy of examination. And this is something that is happening not only in the East Sea, but also in the South China Sea, where you see such similar instances with the Philippines. The Chinese side have said that they have a vision of a Chinese dream. By 2049, they would wish to reunify the motherland and bring back all the areas that are not currently in their control. Their primary focus, of course, is on Taiwan. But that is not to say that the other disputed areas, which include the Senkaku in Japan and the islands of the South China Sea, are also within its watch list. So what the Chinese have declared openly is that they will step up their activities. They have specifically mentioned that not only will they step up the number of civilian and fishing vessels going into these areas, they will actually organize them so that they go in large flotilla. But they will also have the Coast Guard come in, which is just short of the Chinese Navy, actually, in a sense.
Right.
And also we will see the intrusions in the airspace in these areas with reconnaissance flights going in. So in one sense, what you do see is that the level of activity is going to be stepped up in scale, and also in terms of the symbolic effect that they have because of the involvement of paramilitary or military forces.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, also the Thomas Shoal dispute with the Philippines. Clearly the Philippines is relying on the United States, but what do you think? Do you think the US's commitments are as ironclad as President Biden makes them out to be?
It is quite interesting because President Marcos Jr. is currently on a visit to the US as well. And Biden, Kishida, and Marcos had a historic first time ever tripartite meeting. One of the key areas of discussion was the question of security and particularly how they are going to treat the mutual defense agreement that is in place between the US and the Philippines. President Biden has given assurances to the Philippine side that this is something that is ironclad, as he put it. And therefore, if there is any intrusion or attack on Philippines naval vessels, Coast Guard vessels, police outfits, then the US would come to their assistance. This is, of course, something that has been ratcheting up in recent months. As you would know, that the Philippine side has been trying to replenish and refurbish the marooned ship which is there in the
Yes.
shoal. And there has been a lot of opposition from the Chinese forces, which are located in the nearby Mischief Reef. And so the second Thomas Shoal has now become a bone of contention in which the Philippine side is being prevented from doing the refurbishment and replenishment exercise by the Chinese Coast Guard. So the Philippine side is obviously very, very upset about it. What has also come out is certain understandings that may have been reached informally between the former Philippine president and the Chinese side regarding this, in which it is suggested that maybe he had given certain concessions to the Chinese. So I think what President Marcos is trying to do is to get back the status quo so that the Philippines can maintain their presence over there.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, also the China National Offshore Oil Corporation has found a lot of oil in the South China Sea. I mean, this was the reason why the disputes became so serious, is because the UN in some report had said that there's potential for oil in the South China Sea, and that's when China decided that they wanted to stake claim, Taiwan stake claim for all these places. But how valuable is this in a world that's trying to move away now from fossil fuels?
Well, the hydrocarbon reserves are obviously a very important element in this game of sovereignty tussle and territorial claims that are ongoing between China and several littoral states of the South China Sea. So China now has problems on this count, not just with the Philippines, but also with Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And all of these actually have oil reserves in the area that is now called the 7-dash line, which China has, in a sense, marked a line which gets into the exclusive economic zone of these countries. The most contentious issues are the ones which are with Vietnam, in which there are very many proven claims, and there is drilling that's going on, and some of these blocks are contested. But also what we've seen is that the Malays and the Brunei side also have a similar situation, though the contestation on that particular front with these two countries is not as acute as it is with the Philippines and with Vietnam. So I think despite the fact that there is a certain debate and discussion about climate change and moving away from hydrocarbons, this is going to continue to be a strong economic issue apart from the emotive issue of the South China Sea sovereignty.
Finally, Ambassador Bhattacharya, the Court of Arbitration found that China had no legitimate claims. That happened in 2016. So is it possible that, China can change the rules by force as it's trying to do, given the example that Russia has done with Ukraine and is trying to do that there?
So this has been a very serious issue of contention as to what should be the role of international law, or particularly UNCLOS 1982 in this particular context, and the so-called issue of the use of force to settle disputes or historical claims. And the last time when the Philippines took China to the UNCLOS Tribunal of Arbitration was in 2013, which was following the Scarborough Shoal intrusions in 2012, when the Chinese had taken over that particular island and set of islands, and Philippines went to claim that this was not in line with the UNCLOS provisions. In fact, it was in contravention. China decided not to join that particular case. And in fact, when the ruling came, which was largely in favor of the Philippines, it rejected that particular ruling outright and did not seek or try to implement it. So this brings up a very serious issue, because on the one hand, you have a major power like China and others which are not as powerful, obviously, which are now being, in a sense, subject to saber rattling by the larger power. And should the rule of law prevail, international law prevail, or should just be something that is decided by the show of force or the threat of use of force. This is something that I think needs to be discussed much more intently. China has been very steadfast in maintaining that this particular dialogue is something that needs to be done only bilaterally. In other words, China and Philippines or China and Vietnam, but not with the others.
Okay.
But this is something on which others also have to pitch in, because the South China Sea, where this is actually happening, is part of the global commons in which everybody has an interest. And the South China Sea is not China's sea.
Right, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, for throwing light on the deeper issues involved in the conflicts in the South China Sea. Thanks for being with us.